good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything. Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. Today, we will be talking about a very interestingly named group of countries called the Asian Tigers. The Asian Tigers between 1945 and August 2001, when this book was copywritten, published 2002, but it was set in stone when it's copyright, right? Copyright date 2001, right? The Asian Tigers, setting the scene. At a university in Taiwan, Professor Zhu Wengxing proudly unveiled an invention that he had worked on for 10 years. His invention was a computerized fingerprint recognition device, which was soon put to use. To Zhu, XU, however, the most satisfying aspect of this success was that the technology involved was developed in Taiwan. Taiwan was one of 4 small Asian lands that vaulted into the class of newly industrialized countries by the 1980s. Besides Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and South Korea are also known as their aggressive economic growth. Besides Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and South Korea are also known for their aggressive economic growth. The 4 are called the Asian Tigers, although they differ in important ways. All followed similar roads to modernization after 1945. Additionally, all 4 nations were influenced to some degree by China and Confucian traditions. Heading. New heading. Taiwan and Hong Kong. Both Taiwan and Hong Kong have deep cultural historical links to China. Both were once part of China. Neither, however, experienced Mao's communist revolution. The island of Taiwan was once ruled by mainland. Today, the People's Republic still considers it part of China. Is it still called the People's Republic of China? Why don't we check the internet right now? Because I think that it's called the CCP, which is the Communist Chinese... So let's start there. What does CCP stand for? Chinese Communist Party. Okay. Officially, the Chinese Communist Party, is founded sole ruling party is People's Republic of China. Okay. So, wait. So the Chinese Communist Party, officially the Communist Party of China, CCP or CPC, is the founding and sole ruling party in the People's Republic of China. Got it. Oh, that's interesting. See, I didn't know that. The island of Taiwan was once ruled, yada, 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 I already said that. Hong Kong was returned to China in 1997 after more than a century under British colonial rule. Taiwan. The island of Taiwan was ruled by China until 1885, when it fell to Japan. The Japanese built some industry, providing a foundation for later growth. In 1945, with Japan defeated, Taiwan reverted to China. But when Jiang Jiechi fled to the mainland in 1945, he fled the mainland in 1949, he set up his nationalist government in Taiwan. Despite Jiang's autocratic rule, Taiwan experienced rapid economic growth and enjoyed United States support. First, Taiwan set up light industries such as textiles. Later, it developed heavy industry. The Green Revolution of the 1960s, with its new seeds and fertilizers, helped Taiwan's agriculture become more productive. Today, trade boomed, industrial cities grew, and in time, Taiwan's standard of living rose to one of the highest in Asia. With economic success, the government slowly allowed people more political freedom. Hostility between Taiwan and the mainland eased somewhat as the Cold War ended in the 1990s. Taiwan's businesses took advantage of Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms to invest in companies on the mainland. Deng Xiaoping being the Chinese leader after Mao. Maybe two after Mao or directly after Mao, I forget. But after Mao. Most people in Taiwan welcomed closer links with the mainland, yet some fear Beijing's power over the island's economy. Beijing still wants to reunite Taiwan and China. It sees Taiwan as a province of China, not an independent nation. What's the deal with Taiwan right now? So this is, again, 2001. Let's see what the deal is right now. Taiwan. Having this light in front of the computer does make it a little bit more difficult to see. Let's do it this way. Better. Taiwan. Come on. I have 3 bars on internet. What are we doing? Taiwan. Oh, okay, here we go. News. Let's go to news, actually. China's fresh map claims over China's fresh map claims over Taiwan disputed sea stir protests. That's a headline. I don't know what that means. Taiwan possesses all qualifications for statehood, a parliamentary committee report says. Okay, Taiwan, China is now what I'm searching. Sorry for the delay, but I just want to set context being everything. For Taiwan today, reading about Taiwan from 2001. A little warm here as well. Let's see. So Taiwan warns of surge in tensions as Chinese fighter jets cross median line. Okay, so that's could be considered an act of war. So it seems like China's muscle flexing won't stop with us, says Taiwan's Wu. Indian Ocean next. Okay, so it sounds like Taiwan, still independent, sounds like China threatening. Okay, so that's the context for today. After this last sentence, China sees Taiwan as a province of China, not an independent nation, in August of 2001. Today, it seems like they are beginning to make murmurs of mobilization. Not good, because of war and all that. Hong Kong. Britain gained the tiny island of Hong Kong after the Opium War. Under British rule, Hong Kong and nearby territories grew into a center of trade. In 1949, millions of refugees from China escaped. Actually, let's just put a sticky note here because that seems like a good thing to return to. Britain gained the tiny island. Okay, yeah. In 1949, millions of refugees from China escaped the revolution by crowding into Hong Kong. They provided labor and capital to help the area develop. Hong Kong's new prosperity was based largely on trade and light industry, such as textiles and electronics. It also became a world financial center with many foreign banks and busy stock market. Wealth from these profitable industries helped Hong Kong modernize. Hong Kong's amazing growth was also due in part to its location on China's doorstep. Hong Kong, Chinese built commercial ties in the mainland, and at a time when the People's Republic was largely isolated from the world community. This gave Hong Kong the chance to buy and sell goods with a market that was unavailable to many other countries. In 1997, Britain returned Hong Kong to China. The People's Republic of China agreed not to change Hong Kong's social or economic system for 50 years and to allow its people self-government. Still, many Hong Kong residents remain nervous about China's power and use of repressive measures against protests. In 1997, Britain returned. Hong Kong's social. The People's Republic of China agreed not to change Hong Kong's social or economic system for 50 years. Now I'm going to check China and Hong Kong. Bear with me, folks. Setting context here. Let's see. Let's just read the top headlines. I don't want to take too long. Washington Post. Opinion. Hong Kong's downfall is a warning to the world. On July 1st, the anniversary of Hong Kong's 1997 handover to China from British rule used to be a day of celebration in the city. Doesn't sound like it is anymore based off of the headline. I'm not reading any further. Al Jazeera. UK says Hong Kong freedoms continue to erode, drawing Chinese anger. Northeastern Globe News. What Taiwan can learn from the fall of Hong Kong. News Bureau. Book describes how Hong Kong media wages Asia's cultural Cold War. And finally, let's read CNBC. Potential Taiwan conflict will hit these three countries hardest, EIU reports say. This is I'm reading this on September 1st, 2023. Okay. Really taking a long time here. Singapore, new heading. And I do have to play the drums with a boomer band, and that's all due respect. And I have to leave shortly, so I should probably finish. Singapore, new heading. The smallest Asian tiger is a city-state of Singapore. It sits on a tiny island at the tip of Malay Peninsula in Southeast Asia. Its 200 square miles have a population of about 2 million. In 1819, British Empire builder Sir Stamford Raffles leased the island from a local ruler. Raffles recognized its ideal location on the Strait of Malacca, halfway between China and India, and not the Greek term for Malacca. He and his successors turned the island's fishing village into a seaport. Under British rule, Singapore grew rapidly. The population came to include Malayans, British merchants and sailors, and Chinese and Indian immigrants. All hoped to prosper in booming city. The British brought in Chinese workers to work in factories that processed tin and rubber from Malaya. In time, the Chinese, with their Confucian traditions, became the dominant ethnic group. Order and prosperity. Singapore won independence from Britain in 1959 and then from nearby Malaya in 1963. For 30 years, Lee Kuan Yew was Singapore's autocratic prime minister. What does autocratic mean? Relating to a ruler who has absolute power. So, autocratic, so autocracy is ruled by a guy with absolute power. What's fascism? Political philosophy, movement of a regime that exalts nation and often race above individual, and that stands for centralized autocratic. Okay, so one and the same. Autocracy is in a fascism. Yeah, fascist, whatever, you know what I mean. The government welcomed skilled immigrants and insisted on education for all its people, on both English and Chinese. It encouraged high-tech industries, manufacturing, finance, and tourism. As Singapore's economy grew, its standard of living rose. The government set up a successful public housing program. Most married couples became homeowners with the help of government loans. Ongoing issues. Lee's successors continued his strict policies, allowing government claim that order was more important than individual freedom. Still, it faced demands for more rights from its many young, well-educated citizens. Because Singapore depended heavily on trade, its economy was influenced by events elsewhere, yet it weathered the Asian financial crisis. Over the years, it also faced ethnic tensions between the Chinese majority and Malaya and Indian minorities. Despite such issues, Singapore was often seen as a model of successful development. With few natural resources, it built a booming economy. How did it succeed? Lee Kuan Yew preached Confucian values, such as hard work, loyalty toward family, and respectful obedience to authority. Lee and others also spoke of a Confucian model of development. Singapore and the other Asian tigers, they noted, all had stable governments that invested in education. In each, the Confucian ethic shaped attitudes about work. People worked long hours for low wages. Is that why... Here comes a stereotype. Positive, though. Is that why the Asian folks tend to be harder workers? Confucian values of hard work? Maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying what they said here and making a inference based off of an educated guess. People worked long hours for low wages. They also saved these wages, which enabled banks to invest in further development. The two Koreas. New heading. The fourth Asian tiger, South Korea, emerged during the Cold War. It occupies the southern half of Korean peninsula. In 1910, Japan annexed the Korean peninsula, imposing harsh rule on it. After World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States agreed to temporary division of Korea along the 38th parallel of latitude. Before long, North Korea, ruled by Kim Il-sung, became a communist ally of the Soviet Union. In South Korea, the United States backed the authoritarian but non-communist leader Syngman Rhee. The Korean War. Both leaders wanted to end the division. In early 1950, Kim Il-sung, for a heroic struggle... What? In early 1950, Kim Il-sung called for a heroic struggle to reunite Korea. North Korean troops attacked and soon overran most of the South. Oh, wow. The United States then organized a UN force to help South Korea. Wait, who are these guys? Before long, North Korea ruled by... So who was the leader of Korea before it was split? Whatever. Both leaders, heroic struggle. North Korea attacked South Korea. The United States organized UN force to help South Korea. UN forces were made up mostly of Americans and South Koreans. They were led by United States General Douglas MacArthur, who had commanded troops in World War I and World War II. How old was this guy? And headed the occupation of Japan. This guy must have been ancient. He landed troops behind enemy lines, drove the invaders back across the 38th parallel, and then pushed northward to the Yalu River along the border of China. MacArthur's success alarmed China. Mao Zedong sent Chinese troops to help the North Koreans, who again advanced southward. The Korean War turned into a stalemate. Finally, in 1953, both sides signed an armistice, or end to fighting. The armistice has held for nearly 50 years, but no peace treaty has ever been negotiated. More than 1 million North Korean and South Korean troops dug on either side of what? More than 1 million North Korean and South Korean troops dug in on either side of the demilitarized zone, DMZ, an area with no military forces near the 38th parallel. At the end of the 1990s, American forces were still in South Korea to help guarantee the peace. After the war, the two Koreas slowly rebuilt economies destroyed by the fighting and by years of Japanese occupation. Both remained centers of Cold War tensions. The United States funneled aid to South Korea while the Soviets helped the North. South Korea, by the mid-1960s, South Korea's economy had leaped ahead. At first, it exported inexpensive textiles and manufactured goods. Later, it shifted to higher-priced exports such as automobiles and electronics. As in the other Asian tigers, its growth was partly due to low wages, long hours, and other worker sacrifices. By the 1990s, South Korea was an economic powerhouse. With prosperity, workers won better pay, and the country's standard of living rose greatly. In 1997, Asian financial crisis brought hardships such as the business failure and high unemployment. The government undertook difficult economic reforms, and by 2000, the nation's economy was recovering. For decades after the Korean War, dictators backed the military ruled in South Korea. Dictators backed by the military ruled. For decades after the Korean War, dictators backed by the military ruled in South Korea. I think that's a typo. By 1987, however, growing prosperity and fierce student protests pushed the government to hold direct elections. Since then, the nation has moved successfully towards democracy. North Korea. Under Kim Il-sung, state-owned industries and collective farms increased output of North Korea. That growth slowed, however, in the late 1960s. Kim's emphasis on self-reliance kept North Korea isolated, even when its Soviet and Chinese allies undertook economic reforms. North Korea clung to hardline communism. Propaganda constantly glorified Kim as the great leader. After he died, his son Kim Jong-il, or the Dear Leader, took over. He faced huge problems. Failed government policies and terrible floods destroyed harvests, bringing widespread hunger. During the late 1990s, North Korea had to accept food aid from the United States, South Korea, and other nations to prevent mass starvation. Kim held on to power despite the misery and famine. It sounds like they learned from that because they, according to primary sources, they intentionally keep food rations very light and spare so people starve without any floods. So I don't know. Maybe that just might have been mistake on the part of the textbook, or maybe future vision gives us the insight that it was an intentional way to control and weaken the population against their leaders. It's possible. I don't know. Never been there. The nuclear issue. Like several emerging nations, North Korea tried to develop nuclear power and electricity and for weapons. Under intense pressure from the United States, it agreed to end its nuclear weapons program in exchange for oil and other assistance. Yet North Korea continued to threaten South Korea and nearby Japan by testing missiles. Outlook for unity. And this is the end of our time today. Thank you. Despite differences between the two Koreas, most Koreans want to see their country reunited. After all, they share the same history, language, and culture. Restoring unity is of global interest because of Korea's strategic location in Asia. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know enough. Goodbye. God bless.